Wirecard collapsed, 1.9 billion euros was missing. But investigators were not dealing with a suitcase of stolen cash or a vault that had been emptied overnight. The company eventually admitted something even more shocking. The money probably never existed. And one of the most powerful men inside Wirecard vanished almost immediately. His name was Jan Marsalek, the company's chief operating officer. At first, he looked like a fugitive escaping one of Europe's biggest corporate fraud scandals. Then the story became stranger. British prosecutors later said Marsalek was directing a Russian spy network operating across Europe, targeting journalists, dissidents, and even a United States military facility. And investigative reporting suggested his connections to Russian intelligence may have begun years before Wirecard collapsed. So what was Jan Marsalek really? A financial criminal who became useful to Russia after he disappeared? Or an intelligence asset who had been hiding in plain sight inside one of Germany's most celebrated companies? To understand why that question matters, you have to understand what Wirecard once represented. For years, Wirecard was promoted as proof that Germany could produce a global technology champion. It processed digital payments, expanded internationally, attracted major investors, and in 2018 entered Germany's prestigious DAX stock index. At its peak, Wirecard was worth roughly 24 billion euros. Its chief executive, Markus Braun, was the public face of the company. Jan Marsalek was different. He operated more quietly, but his influence inside Wirecard was enormous. Marsalek joined the company in 2000 and became chief operating officer a decade later. He oversaw important international operations and had access to some of the most complicated parts of Wirecard's business. Colleagues and journalists would later describe a man fascinated not only by finance, but by intelligence services, military affairs, secret networks, and geopolitics. For years, journalists had questioned Wirecard's accounting. The company denied wrongdoing, attacked critics, and insisted that its finances were sound. Then, on June 18, 2020, the illusion broke. Auditor EY said it could not confirm the existence of 1.9 billion euros supposedly held in trustee accounts in Asia. The missing amount represented roughly a quarter of Wirecard's balance sheet. 4 days later, Wirecard admitted the money probably did not exist. The company filed for insolvency soon afterward, and Jan Marsalek disappeared. But here is the strange part. His escape did not look like the desperate improvisation of a businessman suddenly trapped by scandal. It looked organized. After the missing money was exposed, Marsalek reportedly told colleagues he was traveling to the Philippines to locate the funds and prove that the accounts were real. That story sent investigators in the wrong direction. Later reporting indicated that Marsalek had actually traveled from Austria toward Belarus and then entered Russia. German authorities accused him of involvement in the Wirecard fraud. Interpol issued a red notice. Police across Europe searched for him. But Marsalek remained out of reach. Then investigators started looking backward through his life. And the story changed again. A major 2024 investigation by European media organizations reported that Marsalek had developed links to Russian military intelligence years before Wirecard collapsed. The reporting suggested he may have been recruited as early as 2014. If that is correct, the timing changes everything. It would mean Marsalek was not simply a corporate fugitive who found protection in Russia after his financial empire collapsed. His Russian relationships may have existed while he was still one of the most powerful executives at Wirecard, and that raises a much bigger question. What access did he have while he was still inside the company? Remember this detail because it matters later. Wirecard was not just a technology brand. It handled payments, merchants, business relationships, international transactions, and sensitive financial information across borders. A senior executive inside that system could possess something intelligence services value enormously: access. Then British investigators uncovered something even more dramatic. In February 2023, counter-terrorism police in Britain arrested members of a Bulgarian group accused of spying for Russia. Inside the home of one suspect, Orlan Rusev, investigators found what prosecutors later described as a spy factory. There were fake identity documents, hidden cameras, surveillance equipment, devices disguised as everyday objects, and digital evidence connecting Rusev to Jan Marsalek. Investigators recovered tens of thousands of messages. British prosecutors said Rusev's group operated under Marsalek's direction. Their targets included investigative journalist Christo Grozev, known for exposing Russian intelligence operations, and Roman Dobrokotov, editor of The Insider. Members of the network followed targets across Europe. They discussed surveillance. They discussed honey traps. They discussed kidnapping scenarios. They created false identities and used sophisticated equipment to collect information. One operation focused on a United States military facility near Stuttgart, Germany. Prosecutors said the group believed Ukrainian soldiers were being trained there to use Patriot air defense systems. The network explored ways to gather intelligence that could help identify and potentially track personnel connected to that training. Marsalek was not physically carrying out the surveillance. That is what made the case more disturbing. According to prosecutors, Rusev directed the operatives on the ground. Marsalek directed Rusev. He appeared to sit above the visible network. By 2025, 6 members of the Bulgarian group had either pleaded guilty or been convicted of spying offenses in Britain. Together, they received sentences totaling more than 50 years. The Crown Prosecution Service said Rusev had taken instructions from Marsalek, who acted as an intermediary connected to Russian intelligence services. Or perhaps he had been something different for much longer. Because this is the mid-story twist. The most unsettling possibility is not that Russia discovered Marsalek after he became a fugitive. It is that Russia may have valued him before anyone outside Wirecard understood who he really was. Think about his position: money, international travel, corporate infrastructure, access to payment networks, high-level business contacts, a legitimate reason to meet people across borders, and the protection that comes from being a senior executive at a respected public company. For an intelligence service, that combination can be extraordinarily useful. British court evidence later showed Marsalek discussing intelligence matters with Rusev. Other investigations revealed links between Marsalek and figures connected to security and intelligence circles. Then, Austria added another layer. Former Austrian intelligence officer Egisto Ott was accused of abusing official databases and passing sensitive information into a network linked to Marsalek. The material involved government information, journalist Christo Grozev, official phones, and secure communications technology. Suddenly, the Wirecard scandal no longer looked like a self-contained financial crime story. It looked connected to a much wider world of espionage, surveillance, and influence. And Marsalek remained missing. For years, his exact location was publicly uncertain. Then investigative journalists reported in 2025 that they had identified and tracked him in Moscow. They said he had been living under false identities, including the name Alexander Neladov. The man who had supposedly vanished had not disappeared from the world. He had simply entered another one. Meanwhile, the cases surrounding him continued producing convictions. In March 2025, 3 Bulgarian defendants were convicted in London after 3 other members of the network had already pleaded guilty. Then came another major development in 2026. On May 20th, an Austrian court convicted former intelligence officer Egisto Ott of spying for Russia, misuse of office, bribery, and breach of trust. He was sentenced to 4 years and 1 month in prison. His lawyer said he planned to appeal. The court found that Ott had made unauthorized database searches and supplied sensitive material into a network linked to Marsalek. Marsalek himself was not in the courtroom. He remains a fugitive. But the people, messages, operations, and convictions around him have made the story far harder to dismiss as rumor. Now go back to the beginning. 1.9 billion euros. That was the number that first made Jan Marsalek famous around the world. A massive sum listed on Wirecard's accounts that auditors could not find. At first, everyone asked the obvious question: where did the money go? Then came the stranger answer. Wirecard said it probably never existed. But the missing money may not be the deepest mystery in this story. The deeper mystery is the man who vanished when the company collapsed. Jan Marsalek entered public view as a technology executive wanted over one of Europe's most spectacular corporate scandals. He later emerged at the center of espionage cases involving covert surveillance, fake identities, dissidents, journalists, secret communications, and Russian intelligence. And the timeline leaves one question unresolved. Where does the Wirecard executive end and the intelligence operative begin? Because if the reporting about recruitment as early as 2014 is accurate, then Marsalek's escape in 2020 may not have been the moment he entered Russia's world. It may simply have been the moment everyone else finally saw it. And Jan Marsalek is still out there? So, which story do you believe? Was he a financial criminal who became a Russian intelligence asset after Wirecard collapsed? Or was he already part of that world while billions of euros, corporate power, and international access were sitting in his hands?